children, all her siblings were here, and she came and stood next to me during the invitation, and I sat there. But that was her. She is so much taller. It was so good seeing her come here. Wow. That's what our events are all about, amen? All right, so tonight, I've got so many different papers here. We're looking at the Proverbs, and we're going to look at just some miscellaneous topics that are found within the Proverbs, and some of them will, kind of be an overlap, but some of them it wasn't enough to really to handle for an entire class. And so I'm going to do a couple of those just to wrap up our focus. All right, so we're going to start, though, in looking at this. What I've loved about going through the Proverbs, and I've loved about on CIA, our CIA class, we've looked at Ecclesiastes at the same time we're looking at the Proverbs on Thursday. So we just wrapped up all of the 12 chapters of Ecclesiastes. And so what's been great is being able to, on Wednesday night, focus on the Proverbs, and on Thursday morning, focus on Ecclesiastes. And it's so powerful that we have the wisdom from God that was granted to Solomon. He learned from his own mistakes, wrote them down, and it helped us understand that, first of all, we have a helpmeet. We have a helper through his word, and it gives us that comfort to be able to make it. And I don't have to reinvent the wheel. I don't have to go through the school of hard knocks to be able to understand what is right and what is wrong. We can literally follow this wisdom. And so, again, I've been thankful for the study. And so we'll begin in Proverbs 14, 33 through 34. Who has that? All right, Austin's got it. All right, Christian's on his way. Did y'all hear that? We got the microphones. So if y'all could make sure that's on. You want to read it again? Yeah.
Don't mind. Wisdom rests in the heart of the one who has understanding, but in the hearts of fools it is made known. Righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a disgrace.
So sin is a disgrace. The idea is it's a reproach to any people. It's interesting that righteousness and sin can in fact affect a nation. Notice one is going to exalt the nation, one is going to bring the nation down. Righteousness elevates it, but sin destroys it, tears it down. Proverbs 15:22, without counsel, plans go awry, or plans fail without counsel. But in the multitude of counselors, they are established. This is why I have Mary. She was, you may not know this, she was her school paper editor. She was I just went blank on the paper. The yearbook, thank you. Yearbook editor. It's funny I couldn't think of yearbook. Isn't that weird? She was the editor of that, and so that's very helpful because so many times I've given her articles, and let me tell you, I got it done so quick, I didn't get it to her. So if there's a mistake, it's my fault, not hers this week. All right? Why is it that we want to give have an editor, have someone look at it? I need to have some other eyes on it because there are times I'll go back and I'll look at something that was staring me right in the face, and I had something spelled wrong, or I had something that was right there, and I didn't even see it. It wasn't there before. It couldn't have been there. No, it was. But we need to have other eyes on it. And that reminded me of Proverbs 18:17. The one who states his case first seems right until the other comes and examines him. It's always important to have another set of eyes, another set of ears to hear or to look over our plans. It helps us see, okay, is this the right path? I hadn't thought about it from that angle, right? And it's ask any insurance adjuster. Rodney, isn't that right? To be able to get the specific perspective, it's important to have maybe 2 or 3 different witnesses that were there to be able to see. You're going to hear different things because something happened so quickly. It might have been a blue car. It might have been a red car. Wait, what was it? hearing other things helps get to the bottom of what's going on. And so, very helpful. There's wisdom in counsel. Proverbs 15:27. Actually, and I like to also mention this. There was wisdom in, I had an idea for the theme for the year. And I brought it to the elders, and they didn't really like the theme that I'd had for it. But you know what? I went back to the drawing board, and the theme that they've approved, I like better than the one I had come up with. I was asking for their wisdom for the congregation, and that was a beautiful thing. And so that's how that's important, that we get different perspectives on what's important for the congregation. I'm so thankful that we have proactive elders, and you should be thankful as well. I know you are as well. So Proverbs 15:27. He who is greedy for gain troubles his own house, but he who hates bribes will live. So being greedy for gain invites enemies, into any house or on any house. Being fair and just brings honor to any house. Proverbs 17:14. The beginning of strife is like releasing water. Therefore, stop contention before a quarrel starts. I was thinking about the winter. We're going into the winter months, right? Who has already turned off your water and put the insulator on the outside of your faucets? Yeah, I did, and then I needed to use them because it got warmer, so I better go make sure I go back and do that. But when you turn the water off inside, doesn't matter how much you sit there and turn the outside faucet, no water's coming because you've shut it off. You've shut it off. When someone's sitting there and they're agitating at you, nothing's going to come out if you've shut it off, if you shut it down. That's what this is saying. He's saying the beginning of strife is like the releasing of water. Now, fast forward, or I think back when we had to do the hydrants, when I had to relay the hydrant line to the engine one, that was some of the most powerful water coming off of that city. There was nothing stopping it, and it was so powerful that I couldn't hold it by myself. I had to have somebody else. Water is powerful, and if you allowed it to open up, man, it'll blow up at you. Have you ever been hit with it? I have been hit with that straight power. I'm trying to remember now. I think it was 500 gallons per minute. That's a lot of power. And the idea is if we think, we can handle this, I can handle this frustration with somebody, well, before you know it, it gets more and more pressure. And it becomes a grudge. It becomes anger to the point, that Jesus was more concerned about shutting it off at its start. Remember Matthew 7:12? So whatever you wish that others do to you, do also to them, for this is the law and the prophets. Within the same context, he's talked about, you've heard that it was said, whoever murders is liable to judgment. He says, but I say anyone who is angry is liable to hellfire. Angry. Jesus is more concerned with those few drops that lead to the pressure of building up. That is exactly what Solomon is saying. Shut off the water before it starts, right? So, if that water is shut off from the inside, doesn't matter how agitated someone is getting at you, then you're going to treat them the way you want to be treated. And that stops that from happening. You're able to stop the releasing of water before it even starts. All right, I loved that one. All right, Proverbs 20, verse 3. It is honorable for a man to stop striving, since any fool can start a quarrel. It's in the same way, any fool can start a quarrel, but it takes wisdom to stop it. And it's honorable for a man to stop striving. But for some reason, the world wants to look at someone who might be, getting spit upon or slapped, that you're not retaliating. It looks like you're being a weakling. It looks like you're a pushover. But if you can respond in this way, it can stop that from happening. All right, Proverbs 17:15. He who justifies the wicked and he who condemns the just, both of them are alike an abomination to the Lord. Proverbs 17:17. So 2 verses later. A friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. All right, Proverbs 18, verse 10. The name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous run to it and are safe. You know, you think about a strong tower, especially within Palestine. You know, the highest height, you know, you're going to see it from miles around. You know, when you go into a city, you can see the skyscraper from a large distances, because it's there, it's a beacon. And what he's saying is the name of the Lord is the beacon for our hope, our help. He says, run to it and be safe. So I had Psalm 71, 1 through 4, and I didn't give that out because I've got it in the contemporary English version, and I wanted to read that. It says, I run to you, Lord, for protection. Don't disappoint me. You do what is right, so come to my rescue. Listen to my prayer and keep me safe. Be my mighty rock, the place where I can always run for protection. Save me by your command. You are my mighty rock and my fortress. Come and save me, Lord God, from vicious and cruel and brutal enemies. So I love that idea of running to the Lord. And the name of the Lord is the strong tower. It's the only name that will protect us. All right, Proverbs 18:19. A brother offended is harder to win than a strong city, and contentions are like the bars of a castle. What do you think that means? A brother offended is harder to win than a strong city, and contentions are like the bars of a castle. I have a perspective on it, but I'd like to hear what your thoughts are. A brother offended is harder to win than a strong city. Any thoughts on that? What was that, Joyce? So, block around the city, they have protection, right? So someone who's been offended, they might block you out. You can't even penetrate. You can't get in that head because they're so frustrated. I hadn't thought of that. So a strong city has a wall. They've put a wall up. I believe that is what's being said. You know, a brother offended is like trying to overcome maybe a mob mentality. He will read between the lines. He will misinterpret. He will mistrust. He'll put up walls. Once offended, he will read offense from every other thing that you do. That's what happens. And so, you know, trying to overcome a strong city, it's a challenge. You know, so that's why it's so important that we're willing to listen. And I think, too, it gets worse and worse if it's not handled, if that drip is not turned off and that pressure builds up. You know, because this person did this, right? You know, she did that. That means that she's this way because, oh, wait, she did this. Oh, because she did that before and now she did this. That means that's the kind of person she is. And always and never becomes the established idea about somebody. And so there's wisdom here. And we've got to be careful. Why are we offended? We live in a society that it seems to be offended at the drop of a hat. They have to have something to be offended about. So they have a story. All right, Proverbs, thank you very much, Joyce. That was great insight. Proverbs 18:22. He who finds a wife finds a good thing and obtains favor from the Lord. And Adam was the first to receive favor from the Lord, the helpmeet. And we talked tonight about the bride. Proverbs 20 and verse 12. The hearing ear and the seeing eye, the Lord has made them both. So what's interesting to me is God made my ear, God made my eye. God made your ears, God made your eyes. He gave them to us for a reason. Why? To use them. And I thought of this. Use the eyes, ears, and brains God gave you. And have you ever heard this one? Some of these folks ain't got the good sense God gave a rock. Or if only common sense was more common. The idea is God has given us the senses. We need to use them. He gave us 2 eyes, use them. He gave us 2 ears, use them. It is so easy to bypass the senses and go to senselessness. All right, Proverbs 20, verse 29. The glory of young men is their strength, and the splendor of old men is their gray head. And to me, what that's saying is work smarter, not harder. Work smarter, not harder. All right, and I'm kind of going through because I've got a whole other side that we haven't gotten to yet. So forgive me for going too quickly on this. Let's see. Proverbs 21:3. To do righteousness and justice is more acceptable to the Lord than sacrifice. So, what are your thoughts? Why would someone make a sacrifice instead of doing righteousness and justice? Why would someone be more apt to make a sacrifice to God but not do righteousness or justice? Okay, it's easier. That's a good thought. What makes it easier? Oh, it's easier to drop a check than go and do work. That's a good thought. You know, what I was thinking about is trying to make up for bad that someone has done. So say they've not done something that's righteous. Maybe they've been unjust. If they have an opportunity to feel better about themselves, they help by writing that check, or they'll do those things. So making a sacrifice helps right the wrong. And I think that there is this mentality, in society that, doing one thing right crosses out or cancels out something that you do that is wrong. Again, that's something that the world develops to try to function. Yes, Merrill?
Richard, sometimes it's not to your advantage to do right, or it can be a disadvantage to you. And you see it so many times. I mean, David talks about the sacrifice. God wants a broken and contrite heart rather than sacrifices. Yeah. I mean, it's easier to kind of get forgiveness and permission, so to speak. We say that a lot of times as a joke, but some of it's true that we go ahead and do what we want to do and to our benefit, and then we try to make up for it or sacrifice for it, and that's what David said in the Psalms.
Right. That's exactly right. Maybe if I give this amount, or if I give of my time here, I volunteer at a soup kitchen, if I do these things, then I'm going to feel better about myself, but also maybe God will overlook those other things. So that's a very good point there. The Pharisees, Jesus said he desired mercy rather than sacrifice. And see, they were more about the sacrifice to be seen as well. Wow, they must be doing so much good because look at their sacrifice. Look at this. And it was done in the presence of all. I'm sure those coins were clanging loudly. Clang, 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 clang. Man, they've been standing there for 15 minutes dropping those coins. Wow. What a sacrifice. So there's a lot of different reasons surrounding that. But the wisdom is to do righteousness and justice is more acceptable to the Lord than sacrifice. But doing righteousness and justice and sacrifice are important, but the sacrifice should never be done in place of doing what's right or doing what is just. All right, Proverbs 21 and verse 5. Thank you for the comments there. Proverbs 21 verse 5, so 2 verses later. The plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance, but everyone who is hasty comes only to poverty. So I came up with this one. Be one who is cutting edge, not cutting corners. I had a boss in high school that would cut corners, and I could tell you stories, let me tell you. And it was in the food industry, and he would cut corners with pork. And one of them was, once you chop up pork, it loses its shelf life, and it's able to stay in the fridge for about a week after it's been in the smoker. But if you have gone it through the professional chopper, it has to be eaten within 24 hours. And so he also ran a catering business. I never told Kitty Lewis that I helped him run the catering business. There were reasons. I had reasons for telling that. And I remember putting together enough food for 1,000 people, and I had to chop up these massive trays of meat. He took me off the schedule for a week. And I was already on the schedule that week, because what happened is, as people were coming to get their seconds, I went to go get the other trays. I think we had 5 of the massive trays of meat. He said, leave them there, because it was almost time to be over. He took them back to the restaurant, and he double dipped. And he put them on the front line, and he was able to sell them twice, right? But the problem was, it has to be used within 24 hours. I came in the next week because he took me off the schedule all of a sudden. And one of my coworkers says, hey, Richard, go get that last tray of meat. A week later. It was green, y'all. Sorry. And he wanted me to and my boss is sitting there, and he says, you need to serve it. I said, I'm throwing this away. I chopped this a week ago. This is disgusting. And I threw it away in front of the boss. And I was like, man, that made me so mad. When I left that, man, they shut it down because he would cut corners. Disturbing stuff. But you can see that's what happens in the world, and that's what Solomon is saying. The plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance, but everyone who is hasty comes only to poverty. All right, we suspend our disbelief, don't we, at restaurants? Okay. Proverbs 21, verse 16. And who has Hebrews 2, 1 through 3? All right, Jeff's got it. So after this, a man who wanders from the way of understanding will rest in the assembly of the dead. All right, Hebrews 2.
For this reason, we must pay closer attention to what we have heard so that we do not drift away from it. For if the word spoken through angels proved unalterable, and every transgression and disobedience received a just penalty, how will we escape if we neglect so great a salvation? After it was first spoken through the Lord, it was confirmed by those who had heard.
So how can we neglect so great a salvation? How do we neglect it? By not paying careful attention to the things that we've heard, and we begin to drift from it. And so a man who wanders from the way of understanding will rest in the assembly of the dead. I don't know anyone who just intends to just start wandering away. It's a gradual wandering away. Sometimes people just say, that's not for me, and that's not wandering, that's falling away. The idea of wandering away is a gradual drifting away. If you've ever been out in a boat and you're trying to set anchor and say the anchor's not working, or you just try to use the trolling motor to set you in straight and just start fishing. Some person isn't fishing. They are trying to keep that boat straight the whole time because you can't set a course and all of a sudden it's just there. You will drift off course without focus. We have to intentionally focus. All right, Proverbs 21:17, the next verse. He who loves pleasure will be a poor man. He who loves wine and oil will not be rich. All right, Proverbs 22:24 through 25. Who has that? All right, Darnell. Christian's coming.
Make no friendship with a man given to anger, nor go with a wrathful man, lest you learn his ways and entangle yourself in a snare.
Right, so this idea of making friendship with people who are given to anger or wrathful, you're going to learn their ways. Misery loves company, and bad company corrupts good morals. And so I think that's, our children need to learn this, but adults need to learn this too. And it's interesting, you can go back home and you can maybe, spend time with individuals you did when you were at a certain age, and it's easy to fall even back into certain things. And it's easy to, well, where did that come from? I haven't thought that in a long time, not talked about that in a long time. Where did that come from? And so wisdom shows, be careful who we spend time with. All right, Proverbs 24, 1 through 2. Who's got that? This is the next one. All right, Steve's got it.
Do not envy wicked men. Do not desire their company. For their hearts plot violence, and their lips talk about making trouble.
Right, so that would be in the same vein. Proverbs 24:10. If you faint in the day of adversity, your strength is small. When your faith is being challenged, it's easy to faint in that situation. Well, that helps me stop and recognize, okay, where was my faith? It cannot be in our ability to follow God. It can't be in I'm just going to pick myself up by my bootstraps. I'm going to, my faith will get me through. If it can't be in perfectionism either, and it's easy to faint in those situations. We've got to make sure if we ever have that situation, it helps us see, okay, my faith has got to be in God. God is the one that's going to bring me through this. And that helps us to rise again. Proverbs 24, the next one, I should have advanced it, sorry. 15 through 18. Who's got that? All right, James has got that.
Do not lie in wait, O wicked man, against the dwelling of the righteous. Do not plunder his resting place. For a righteous man may fall 7 times and rise again, but the wicked shall fall by calamity. Do not rejoice when your enemy falls, and do not let your heart be glad when he stumbles, lest the Lord see it and it displease him, and he turn away his wrath from him.
Thank you very much, buddy. Verse 16, the righteous fall 7 times and rise again, but the wicked stumble in times of calamity. Jeff, you've mentioned this is your favorite verse, and I see exactly why. I love this. The idea is we might faint in times of adversity, but we will rise again. And every time that if we recognize that something's off, it's going to help us see, wait, I've got to make sure that my faith is in God, and the righteous will rise again. There's a difference in stumbling and a difference in turning your back on God completely. And I think sometimes we mix those together, and we say that the moment I've stumbled is that I've failed or I've absolutely backslid. That's not the case. And so it's extremely important that, first of all, if it is about perfectionism, then I can't, if I did stumble, I've ruined it, it's over. That person is going to struggle to get up, right? It can't be in our ability to fall, because I'll tell you, if it's in my ability to hold on, my faith in God, we have to understand that God has faith in us. And so it's just your faith in God, it's you holding on. Have you ever tried to hold on, get your son or your daughter to walk across the street, and you hold on to their hand? And you're doing that, why? Because you know about the dangers of the cars, but they're not holding on to you. You're just holding on to them. What are they actively trying to do? Trying to get away. First thing I remember doing this was teaching, you are going to hold on to my hand. And then I held underneath. So there was a double holding. It's both. God has faith in us. We have faith in him, right? And so there is this, it's a mutual holding on. God's strength is so much stronger than ours. But if it's just about my faith holding on, I'm not understanding the representation God has in holding on to me. Okay. Notice there it says the righteous falls 7 times and rise again, but then it says do not rejoice when your enemy falls. So there's a temptation if we fall to look for somebody else that falls too, and we don't feel so bad about it. Guess what? If that's the case, we will not rise up from that falling. We'll just stay where we are, and we think that's okay because, you see, this person fell, and that keeps me where I am. I'm not actually trying to rise up. I don't have to because I'm better than that person. That's why bad news sells. And so what he's saying is, don't let your heart be glad when he stumbles, lest the Lord see it and it displease him, and he turn away his wrath from him. So rejoicing when the unrighteous falls makes you unrighteous. And so keeping our eyes on our own paper is so important. Making sure that, yes, when I fall, I fell. And that was on me. And that has nothing to do with anybody else but me and God. And that's how we rise again. But if we look around and say, well, see, this person fell, so my falling really wasn't that bad. We're trying to justify ourselves. We are becoming our own God, not God himself. And there's no wisdom in that. There's no righteousness in that. It is only unrighteous. So, all right, Proverbs 24:27. Prepare your outside work. Make it fit for yourself in the field, and afterward build your house. Right? So there's wisdom in this. I was reading about some history of Coleman County and how Coleman was developed. It was 12 years after the Civil War, and it was a German community. Many of you know about that history. But what was neat was they were coming into wilderness. It had never been developed. And so they're coming into wilderness. And so what would happen is a farmer would send his 2 sons into their plot. And these were yeomen. These were white itinerant farmers. And so they would send their family. And there was a story about two sons that were sent out into the woods to set up the site. Why? Because you're not going to go and build your house because you will not have food. So this was 1878. They did not have Walmart. They did not have any place to go get the food. So what that was is they were going to fell the trees, which would then set up the logs to be able to have the tree, and they would set to the side. But they were setting up their paddock, their fields, their gardens, their crops. And they brought bags of corn with them. Well, their corn started going out, and they almost died in the winter because the corn was gone. But they found out it was a rat that was coming in and taking it into a hollow log. They found the hollow log, and they survived the winter because they got the corn back from the rat. Can you imagine? I don't know if I'd want to be in Coleman at that time. But what it was is they had to go and, you might be like, what on earth is he talking about? But what this is saying is you have to set up the outside work and make it fit for yourself in the field, and afterward build your house. You can build a house, but if you can't live in it, what good is it? He's saying set up this would be the equivalent of making sure you got a job before you come into an area. Don't go and buy a house if you don't have a job. That would be the equivalent of this. It's the idea of priorities too. Make sure that you have food before you have a roof. Priorities. Luke 14:27-33 is one I wanted to look at for the idea of priorities. And this might be the last passage we look at. Meryl? Oh, yeah, Meryl, sorry.
Luke 14:27-33. And whosoever doth not bear his cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. For which of you, intending to build a tower, sitteth not down first and counteth the cost, whether he have sufficient to finish it? Lest haply, after he hath laid the foundation and is not able to finish it, all that behold it begin to mock him, saying, This man began to build and was not able to finish. Or what king, going to make war against another king, sitteth not down first and consulteth whether he be able with 10,000 to meet him that cometh against him with 20,000? Or else, while the other is yet a great way off, he sendeth an ambassador, and desireth conditions of peace. So likewise, whosoever he be of you that forsaketh not all that he hath, he cannot be my disciple.
Right. So if we don't forsake all that we have, we can't be his disciple. That takes priority. Who has ultimate priority? Jesus. If he doesn't have ultimate priority, he's saying you haven't counted the cost. And you are like somebody who goes out into, the field and builds a house without anything else, without any other provision. You go to build a tower and you don't have enough money to finish it. And everyone's going to recognize you didn't consider what you were getting into. This is showing before you become a Christian, you better be thinking through what you're doing before you do it. And so that takes a personal commitment that this is conversion, not getting wet. It's not being dunked. It is a personal commitment, and that person has to know what they're getting into. That's the idea of priority. And so sitting down and recognizing, is this priority? If Jesus isn't priority, but someone just wants to be baptized, they're not being a disciple, they're just getting baptized. And so often we haven't counted the cost. And that's so important for keeping us, this is what we've signed up for. This is what we're here for. So, all right, that is the last one. We're a minute over. So let's go to God in prayer, and we'll be dismissed. Father God, we love you, and we're thankful for the blessings you bestow on us, and Father, for the wisdom that Solomon wrote, and that through your word we can learn what we should do and not have to reinvent the wheel and go through those school of hard knocks to try to figure out what's right and what's wrong. We can follow your word. Help us to do so. Help us to have faith in you. Help us to count the cost. Help us to have our priorities right and putting you first in every way. We know we can through your Son, and it's in his name we pray. Amen.